Welcome back to another Warhammer 40K news video, brought to you by One Mind Syndicate. I am your host, Gersh1, and let's just jump into the news. With the Tau Codex quickly approaching, we will inevitably get small teaser images from Games Workshop. And that is what we got on the official Warhammer 40K Facebook page. We were presented with a map explaining the history of the expansion of the Tau Empire. The image displays a 5-ring holographic-looking projection, and at its center, you have the Tau Sept sigil. Each ring represents the expansion that correlates with each sphere that the Tau undertook. For those new to the Tau lore, the Tau Empire has slowly expanded its borders through a series of so-called sphere expansions. According to this map, the Tau Empire has gone through 5 phases of expansion as of the turn of the 43rd millennium. The image gives a brief description of each expansion, starting with the first. In the first sphere expansion, the Tau settled 8 worlds including Town, Borken, and Viorla, laying the foundation for their future empire. The expansion halted due to the vast distance they are forced to cross without access to faster-than-light travel. During the second sphere expansion, according to this image, following the invention of the SFR Horizon Accelerator engine, the Tau became capable of reaching near light speed, finally crossing the Damocles Gulf and making contact with the Imperium of Man. And then we get to the third sphere expansion, which is the current expansion in the 41st millennium. So before the Codex comes out, before the new lore, this is the expansion that the Tau are in. And it says, with the Imperium forced to pull back their forces to confront other foes, the Tyranids, the Tau and their allies surge from the Damocles Gulf and capture vast new domains, triggering their bloodiest war with the Imperium yet. And then we move on to the fourth sphere expansion. It states that the Tau developed a device that allowed them to pierce the fabric of reality and prepare for a new expansion. The consequences are horrifying, beyond the reckoning of this young species, and suppressed by the Ethereals. Even though the fourth expansion was seen as a failure by the Ethereals, it actually allowed the Earthcast to reverse engineer warp drives and give the Tau faster-than-light travel. They were able to skim the warp edge and successfully go beyond their former borders. Now, in my mind, the fourth sphere expansion is an expansion that happened, but it isn't talked about in the lore because the Ethereals suppressed it. Now, why it's marked as red doesn't make sense to me, because the reverse engineering warp drive did work out for the Tau. They were able to push further and expand their empire in this fourth sphere expansion. My speculation is that the device that they are talking about is the reverse engineered warp drive. But at some point, even skimming the warp proved too dangerous, and hopefully this new lore will give rise to chaotically mutated Tau. We know that the Tau really don't register in the warp, but that doesn't mean that the Tau's biology can't be mutated by the reality-altering powers of the Immaterium. If a prolonged exposure of small jumps through the warp changed a couple of Fire Warriors, and we get some cool-looking mutated Tau, I'll be happy. And now we move on to the 5th sphere expansion. The image says that the Tau used the newly opened Startide Nexus to take their next expansion further than ever before. This Startide Nexus is completely new to the Tau lore, and the following are all speculations, but here are some possible directions GW might take for this new Tau tech. The first is the most boring one. It's a theory that states that the Tau developed a method of faster-than-light travel by manipulating physics to create wormholes in space. It follows the futuristic sci-fi theme that the Tau lore usually gets, but I say it's boring because it really doesn't connect itself to the wider Imperium. The second possibility is that the Tau discovered a Necron tomb world and were able to reverse engineer the Necron's inertialess drive. This is a non-Newtopian, reactionless form of voidcraft propulsion that allows a vessel equipped with it to move through space without any form of inertia. This allows the voidcraft to actually travel faster than the speed of light in a vacuum in real space, without increasing its mass to an infinite size or requiring an infinite amount of power. If any race in the Warhammer 40K universe was able to crack the code of Necron tech, it would be the scientifically inclined Tau Empire. This theory is exciting, but it wouldn't make sense for the Tau to name their device a Startide Nexus. So let's take a look at the name Startide Nexus. If we break it down, the Startide part could be referring to the tides of the warp, since the Tau seem to understand the warp by comparing it to a liquid mass, hence their ability to skim the warp during the fourth sphere expansion. They explain it like a pebble skipping through the edge of the water when thrown. And then we have the term Nexus, meaning a series of connections linking two or more things. So we have a device that provides faster than light travel by connecting various points with the warp. The Tau might have discovered the webway. What a slap in the face to the God Emperor. The Earthcast of the Tau Empire was able to master the very thing that the Emperor lost his entire empire for. The Startide Nexus might be a series of reverse-engineered webway portals. There is one major problem with this theory, because there is no way that the Eldar, especially the Harlequins, would allow the webway to fall into the hands of another race. Not to mention, the webway requires psychic powers. No amount of science would make up for the immense psychic force required to utilize a webway portal. This leads me to my last and favorite theory. The Tau might have discovered the Dolmen Gates. A Dolmen Gate is a living stone portal that serves as a gate into a portion of the webway. Dolmen Gate technology was first developed by the Necrons with the aid of a Catan to gain the upper hand against the Old Ones in the War in Heaven. As a race devoid of psychers, the Dolmen Gates were the only means for the Necrons to obtain faster than light travel at that time. Once the Necrons developed better means of travel, the Dolmen Gates were not used as much anymore, and when the Old Ones ran away from the galaxy and the War in Heaven was won by the Necrons, there was no use for these gates. They were lost and forgotten. If the Tau Empire discovered these gates, it would be perfect for them, because much like the Necrons, the Tau lack psychic powers, and they are a nation of technologically inclined fish people. The fish part is really nothing to do with this whole thing, it's just an insult. But anyways, conquering the warp with technology is what the Tau would do best. And the cherry on top to this theory is that if the Startide Nexus is a series of refurbished Dolmen Gates, then the Tau can go anywhere there's a webway portal. The Tau are no longer stuck in the eastern fringe. Not to mention that this theory ties the Tau to the overall plot of 40K, because the only other accounts of the Dolmen Gates' use in modern time comes from Guilliman himself, when he was forced to create his own Imperium Secundus during the Horus Heresy. And because of this, you know that the Adeptus Mechanicus will try to fight the Tau, claiming that this technology originated from the Dark Age of technology, and Guilliman's use proves its divinity. This theory also ties the Tau and the Eldar together, because the Dolmen Gates disrupt the webway, and the Eldar wouldn't sit idle while this new race starts using the ancient labyrinth to their own benefit. If this theory is true, I speculate some awesome Tau campaign that connects them to one of the lost Primarchs, who have been lost in the Immaterium. Maybe the Tau come across one of them during one of the jumps, or possibly the Tau come to the aid of Jagatai Khan or Leman Russ as they are fighting Dark Eldar in the webway, something like that. There is one final direction GW can take with this new technology, but I was scared to mention it because it's really boring, and that is that the Startide Nexus might just be the name given to the technology already being used by the Tau that allows them to skin the warp. If that's the case...
You fucked up, GW, you fucked up!
The Codex is set for pre-order next weekend, and this month's White Dwarf will hopefully shed more light on this matter. Until then, I would love to hear your theories and thoughts on my speculations. Just comment down below. Now let's move on to more Warhammer 40K news. Now I was going to talk to you guys about the Mechanicum video game coming out for the PC, but it's something that has already been touched on by many Warhammer 40K YouTube channels, and they do a really great job of just going into the details of the mechanics of the game. My thoughts on the game is that it looks amazing. I love the trailer. The idea that you're going to get to play as the Mechanicum and the Adeptus Mechanicus and not your Space Marines or your Imperial Guard is amazing. Another reason why I'm not going to talk about the Mechanicum video game is because my attention was actually drawn over to a different video game. If you guys have ever enjoyed the turn-based 40k games from the past, what have you thought of the new Horus Heresy Betrayal at Calth virtual reality game, available on Steam? And yes, that did sound like an ad. For those that don't know, this completely immersive experience based on the events of the Betrayal at Calth as the Wordbearers Legion assaulted the Ultramarines on their planet of Calth. The game places you in the center of the action. You play as Magos Omnosark, tech priest of the Mechanicum, as you are escorted through the ruins of Calth by Sergeant Acustus and his squad of Space Marine. You use your trusty servo skull to issue orders to the Legionnaires through a single-player campaign. Why the hell would a Magos tech priest be giving orders to the Emperor's finest warriors, the Adeptus Astartes? I have no idea, but I guess they couldn't have you playing as a sergeant. Either way, this is the first time I've heard of VR in the Warhammer 40k universe, so it's still worth a look. The game allows you to customize your troops to create powerful and resilient Ultramarine units, and the turn-based element, I think, fits really well for the VR. It's enough to get you into the world, but not too much VR to give you a headache, because you have to remember that watching the superhuman speed of Traitor Marines chopping you up into little pieces in close combat probably wouldn't be good on your retinas. We also have to give them points for following the story of the Betrayal at Calth and not making up some half-assed chapter with a stereotypical enemy. The bad thing about this game is the mediocre graphics, voice acting, and music, but that's typical of a Warhammer 40k game, I guess. And the pace of the turns might get boring and feel slow, causing you to lose interest, but again, I think it's something we should still check out, and hopefully better VR games set in the Warhammer 40k universe will come out down the road. I'm really crossing my fingers for a VR game where you play a Chaos Cultist devoted to Slaanesh.
My nigga.
And those were the topics for today. If you guys have any other suggestions for news stories that you guys would like us to cover, just comment down below. And again, I'm very interested to hear about your thoughts on the Startide Nexus. What is it? What's your speculation? So comment down below. We read the comments every single day, so if you make a suggestion, we'll try our best to get to it. Again, you can make suggestions as far as anything about Warhammer 40k, so the lore. You can make lore suggestions as well on here. And yeah, thanks for watching, guys. If you want to support us a little bit more, jump on over to Patreon. You know the deal. But thanks for watching. This was Gersh1 with One Mind Syndicate, signing out.